What I thought I'd try with this video is to demonstrate what F.M. Alexander meant by whispered R and how that can be used in a sort of gentler approach to Wim Hof breathing. So I had a lot of Alexander lessons from an old and very wise lady called Marjorie Barlow, who was F.M. Alexander's niece. And she used to tell me, when you think you're wrong, which in my case is a lot, 4 steps. Say no, give your directions or give your verbal orders, go into movement without a care in the world, let it come out in the wash. And so there's a lot of resonance there with Wim Hof's approach to breathing. And the first one in particular, saying no. So in Alexander work, saying no, or conscious inhibition as it's sometimes called, is really explicit. In Wim's approach, it's in the way he teaches, make it a laughing joke, don't force it, let your body do what your body's capable of doing, not forcing anything. Those are all what Alexander called the principle of inhibition, saying no. So what you're saying no to, really, like what Wim says no to when he gets in the ice water, he's saying no to all the peripheral stuff. But in Alexander terms, what you're saying no to is not thinking. It's not a question of, just fucking do it and don't think anything, like thinking is the enemy. In Alexander terms, thinking is really vital, but it's not what we usually think of as thinking. So it's more to do with what Wim calls the mindset or the meditative approach. So it's using thinking to get yourself going in the right direction. So saying no is primarily saying no to all the kinds of thoughts which bring about the kind of tension we don't want. And in particular with breathing, all the kind of tension that causes you to not be able to expand fully on the in-breath. So what we want to do is to expand in our cells on the out-breath, even though, of course, the out-breath is it's an inward movement of the ribs, an upward movement as the diaphragm relaxes up. The floating ribs especially come in. But we're thinking of expanding, so it's paradoxical. That's the most difficult bit of what I'm going to try to demonstrate now. So as the breath goes out and the ribs come in, we're thinking of expanding. And the way we do that is by thinking out, thinking up and out. And what gets in the way of that is the wrong kind of thoughts. So the wrong kind of thought in Wim Hof breathing, numero uno, would be, I want to lengthen my retention times. That kind of thought is in Alexander's called end gaining. So you're worried about gaining the end, and that gets in the way of the process. So saying no to being too serious about it, grim determination. That's my habitual way of being. Has been for 60 years. Grim determination. I'm hell bent on gaining my end. So the opposite of that is what Wim calls make it a laughing joke. So he's very good at that. It's deadly serious business. We're going to be stressing our bodies to the maximum with oxidative stress. But ironically, paradoxically, the best way to approach it is, like Wim says, like a laughing joke. We're going into it. We're going into the lion's den with a smile of our own volition. So in the case of the whispered R, you're saying no to the thought and in that way, saying no to a wrong pattern, really. Now, if the aim you have in view is to get a lot of air in the lungs, which it is in the Wim Hof breathing, then if you just go for it in a sort of instinctual way, it'll be a kind of, everybody's liable to lift the chest like that. But and that's why I observe. Wim doesn't really care, just get the air in. Don't worry about how you do it. Well, the Alexander approach is a little bit more, it's not really breathe, motherfucker. Although there's wisdom in that, because that's part of the don't try and be right. Don't try and get it right. You see, so there's wisdom. I love Wim. I think he's fantastic. But the breathe, motherfucker approach, there's wisdom in that, because it's saying, say no to fussing about. Just get on with it. It's like in Zen, just do it. But the drawback with that approach is that I was taught, I've been doing Zen for 40 years, and I was taught, the most important thing is keep your spine straight vertically. So just do it, motherfucker, go for it, like this. So what I just did there, there's freedom in that. Just do it. Don't worry about anything. Just do it. But if you just notice what I just did there is I pushed my chest up. So that's habitually, in our ignorance, what we tend to think of as upright posture, doing something, you see. In my case, pushing the chest up, pulling the chin in, and, it doesn't stop you from breathing. You can still go deep into stillness. You sit like that 5 hours a day, as I used to do. But something wasn't quite right in it. And when I met the Alexander technique, it was a revelation for me to realise that you didn't have to do all those things so forcefully. You could go up by learning how to think it. Say no to doing all the unnecessary stuff, including the sort of pushing the chest forward. Because if you push your chest up like that, what you're doing actually is you're narrowing the back. You're getting the lengthening, but at the expense of narrowing. Now that's the opposite of what we want in breathing work. In breath work, we want the lengthening, yes, but we also want the widening. So Alexander had this, what he sometimes called an order, or a direction, to let the spine lengthen and the back widen. See, anybody can get the spine lengthening by doing something, and anybody can get the back to widen. By imitating a bodybuilder sort of thing, pushing out. But to get the lengthening and the widening together, that you can't do that. That's a release. And that's exactly the release that we want to get, to let all the air come into the lungs. So saying no, the first thing Marjorie Barlow taught me was say no to trying to be right. When I was in Japan, the agenda I had was to be a true Zen master. That was my big thing. I wanted to be not just any old Zen master. I wanted to be the truest, rightest, most authentic Zen master that I could possibly be. And of course, it's death and destruction to releasing, to lengthening and widening, because there's that tension there. I've got to be right the whole time. So that is the most fundamental thing that I have to say no to. But even people with less ambitious agendas, it's the same problem. If you're a golfer, and you want to hit a good drive, it's the same problem. You've got to. The first trick is to say no to worrying about being right, about getting it right, about gaining the end. So then, first thing, say no. Then give directions. So if we're talking about breath work, again, the most important direction is the widening, really. Especially when we're breathing out, you see, because it's paradoxical. I mean, Alexander teach it best in the context of going up and down in a chair. So it's actually going up the whole time. So you go up to stand up. That's intuitive. If you want to go up, you direct yourself up. But then the counterintuitive thing is that when you want to go into the chair, which is a downward movement in space, you keep on directing yourself up, so that when you arrive in the chair, it feels, wow, I've never done that before. Because usually, I mean, look at like MPs, you know, when they've made their wonderful statement and they flop back down onto their leather benches, they end up like a sack of potatoes because their direction is down. You know, I get my bottom down onto the leather bench and they flop into it. So they're all down. But what Alexander teaches will teach you is you think up, lengthening and widening, and you bend your knees, and the bending of the knees takes you down into the chair, but you're still going up, and your bottom arrives on the chair. Oh, I'm still up. So it feels very different. Now it's exactly the same principle in breathing. So now if I breathe out now and direct my ribs in, it'd be like this. Okay, so that I'm directing my ribs in and moving them in. Okay, which is quite a nice exercise. Nothing wrong with it, you know, as an exploration. But now what I'm going to do is the Alexander thing. I'm going to direct my ribs in, and I'm going to move my ribs in because I'm breathing out, but direct my back to widen at the same time. Now, Alexander had a procedure for doing this, this is the going to movement part. This is what he called a whispered R. So, to make it a consciously controlled movement and a vocal exercise, we're going to make the sound of like R, as in car, ha, but doing it as a whisper. Now, there's a whole lot of direction for a whispered R to do with releasing behind the eyes, smiling again, make it a laughing joke, releasing the jaw open, letting the tongue release and rest against the back of the lower teeth. I'm not going to go into detail and all that stuff. The thing I want to really give people encouragement to think about is letting the ribs move in. So that's the movement, you know. Say no, give you directions, back to lengthen and widen, and let that movement happen. But while the movement is happening that way, you're thinking back to widen. So here we go. Now, what happens there, you see, after I've finished doing the whispered R, breathing out, not everything, but, you know, about 2/3 or 3/4, same as what Wim Hof says, you get this kind of elastic recoil. Because you've been directing the back to expand, when you stop breathing out, you don't have to do the big all in forcefully, because there's a kind of elastic, what you'll experience is the same kind of thing as I've experienced in the chair. Is, well, wow, I didn't have to do all that stuff to gain my end. All you've got to do really, if you've done the whispered R well, you just close your mouth, and this elastic recoil will send your ribs flying apart, and lots of air will come in. So it's going to take longer. If we do 30 cycles of whispered R's, it's going to take longer than what Wim Hof the breathing method usually does. But I've been practicing now for about 6 weeks, and talking to one or two other Alexander teachers, and there's a general feeling of something not quite right with the breathe motherfucker. Just get it in. I say there's nothing really wrong with it. There's wisdom in it, but it can be, if there's something about that looks too forceful, try this whispered arm. So, right, so I'm going to go back to Marjorie's words. Say no, give your directions. Now, Alexander directions, there are really four main ones, which is let the neck be free, let the neck release, don't tighten the neck, to let the head go forward and up, to let the spine lengthen and the back widen while sending the knees forwards and away. And really, all four of them are one thing. So if you really breathe well, all four directions will be working. I'm not going to go into detail here. The four directions. Go and have an Alexander lesson from an experienced teacher is the best way of finding out what those words really mean. Every lesson, Marjorie used to say, every Alexander lesson should put more meaning into those words. Let the neck be free, to let the head go forward and up, to let the back lengthen and widen, sending the knees forwards and away. Again, what we're going to really focus on is letting the back widen. Of course, when you're breathing in, that's when you really want to let the spine lengthen, the back widen, and that movement of lengthening and widening lets all the air in. But here's the trick. Think it when you're breathing out as well, and then see what happens. So, thinking of expanding as you breathe out, and then you really will expand when you breathe in. So, saying no to anything other than making it a laughing joke. Giving directions, back to lengthen and widen. And then going to movement without a care in the world. So when we start doing the whispered R's, not worrying about anything apart from directing and letting the air in when you've done the whispered R. Not caring if it's good or bad, or if it sounds raspy or whatever. The point isn't trying to make a perfect sound. It's just you can listen to the whispered R, and if it's a sort of it shows that you're not really releasing. There's something not released there. So the clearer and freer the sound is, the better a job you're doing of it. But don't care. Don't go into movement without a care in the world. So this is first attempt. So it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. We're starting to practice the whispered R. And then the fourth thing is let it come out in the wash. That's a fantastic. Let it come out in the wash. Again, this relates, I think, to what Wim talks about, like going deep into the physiology and letting the body do what the body's capable of doing. That's what we want. Like nature wanted it. Like nature intended it. That's ultimately what we're doing this for. To give nature a chance for us to be like nature wanted us to be. Okay? So this has been my process, because nature didn't want us to sit upright, sticking the chest out like a moron, like I did so stubbornly for such a long time in Japan. No, that's what people do now in the world of Zen, trying to have good posture, right posture. It's just pure ignorance. That's not how nature wanted us to be. If you want to know how to sit upright, like nature wanted us to sit upright, look into Alexander work. That's what one of Alexander's phrases was. It'll be when an investigation comes to be made. When an investigation comes to be made, it'll be found that everything we're doing in the work is what happens in nature when the conditions are right. The difference being that we are learning to do it consciously. So, in upright sitting, that I would stake my life on the fact. If I have staked my life on the fact that's true. Okay. If you want to know how to sit upright as nature intended, don't go and see some boneheaded Zen idiot. Look into the Alexander work. Alexander work is how you'll find out how to sit upright as the Buddha taught, as nature intended. Now, same with breathing. If you just follow your instinct, you're very liable to do the sort of do the things you don't need to do. So let's do it. Okay. So I say, let's do it. Well, let's say no and give directions. So I might as well go into this as well. For 40 years, I've been studying Zen and making my mistakes around upright posture and breathing and so on. I've also been going back, in the sense of going back to the source in the Buddhist texts. And if you go back to the Mindfulness Sutta, Maha Satipatthana Sutta in Pali, the Buddha talks about mindfulness of breathing in different stages. Our first stage is know that a short breath is short, know that a long breath is long. So it's the principle of inhibition again. You're not trying to change your breathing at all. This is the saying no. There's no agenda to be better, to improve, to be right. You're setting the bar just as low as you can get it, right on the bloody ground. That's the best way to start off. So I was about to start doing the whispered R. I thought, wait a minute, no, I haven't said no properly before I start doing this. You really got to keep coming back and saying no. I'm not here to put on a good show of doing a bloody whispered R. That's not what it's about. The starting point always has to be inhibition, making it a laughing joke, not being serious about it, not trying to get something right. So that's preserved in the Buddhist suttas by the Buddha saying, the monk goes to the forest, goes to some natural place, some quiet place, sits cross-legged, upright, and knows when he's breathing in short, that he's breathing in short. He knows when he's breathing in long, that he's breathing in long. He knows when he's breathing out short, that he's breathing out short. And he knows when he's breathing out long, that he's breathing out long. So there's no intention to have a deep breath, to get the air in fully. So that's the ironic thing, isn't it? In order to do the Wim Hof breathing and really let the lungs get totally full of air, what the first stage you want to do is don't do that. Don't go for that. But just say no and give directions. So giving directions gives you an awareness of the whole body. And if you just spend a few minutes, like Wim says at the beginning, relax, Well, to expand that in Alexander terms, the way you get relaxed is not just by doing a little movement. It's saying no to the thoughts that will tense you up, and then giving these directions. So if you sit, have no agenda, and just think the words, I wish my spine to lengthen and back to widen, without any agenda to do it or improve or get something good. If you just think the words, let the spine lengthen and the back widen, you may find that changes your breathing. Your breathing becomes deeper. Or it may not. It doesn't matter. There's no need to be anxious if it doesn't seem to change anything. But try it. Don't feel anything. Don't expect anything to change. But just think the words. Let the spine lengthen and the back widen. And that changed me. So I wasn't putting it on. Maybe it made me breathe deeper. So I'm going to spend like 30 seconds or a minute just to emphasize that point. Not doing the movement of a whispered R. And then I'll go into doing the whispered R and demonstrate 30 rounds of it. Let the neck be free to let the head go forward and up. Can't do it. Just let the body do what the body's capable of doing. Let the neck be free to let the head go forward and up. To let the spine lengthen and widen, sending the knees forwards and away. If you've heard any good jokes recently, think about those. Alexander said, think of something funny to bring a smile behind the eyes. That's part of the whispered R. Make it a laughing joke. Widening as you breathe out. Lengthening and widening. Okay, last one. Now, widening again. Think of widening, 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 widening. I'm not going to do the squeezing because I don't really understand what all that's about. But I do understand about a whispered R, about letting your thinking of your ribcage expanding even as you breathe out. It's so simple, but it's brilliant. So even though I didn't do any forceful inhaling there, quite comfortably could retain the breath for a minute. So that's an Alexander approach to doing the Wim Hof breathing. If I go back to what the Buddha said in the Mindfulness Sutta, for me, the Alexander work, Wim Hof's discoveries, and what the Buddha taught about breathing, they're all one thing for me, especially if you do the breathing like I've just been demonstrating it. They're about, see, Zen Master Dogen spoke of sitting meditation as being the backward step of turning your light and letting it shine. Eiko hensho no taiho in Japanese. Tai means backwards, ho means step. A backward step of turning your light and letting it shine. A backward step. So they're all the same thing. But Wim Hof has found a fantastic way of going deep, deep, deep into physiology. For me, there's no question about that. And what Wim's talking about, doing this work to make you healthy, happy, and strong. Those three words are all a translation of the Sanskrit word Shivam, which means healthiness, happiness, well-being, strength, energy. So what the ultimate thing you can do with breathing is explore the teaching of emptiness. All the Buddha's teachings are connected with emptiness. And Master Nagarjuna, in his dedicatory verses for his masterwork, he said, Ya pratitya samutpadam prapanchopashamam shivam. What the Buddha taught, said, Deshayamasa sambuddhas tam vande varatam varam. So that's a fantastic Sanskrit verse. Tam vande varatam varam means I bow to him, the best of speakers. Deshayamasa, he taught. What did the Buddha teach? Pratitya samutpadam, dependently arisen. Prapanchopashamam, the ending of prapancha means bullshit, most broadly. The ending of bullshit, just like what Wim talks about. But also, when you read what Nagarjuna clarified, specifically, prapancha means objectification. It has to do with his teaching of emptiness. So, if we objectify the breathing, for example. One of the reasons you do mindfulness of breathing is you can't really objectify breathing. So that's why it's a good thing to meditate on. Because what is it? It's not an object, is it? It's a happening. So again, I'm going more into Buddhism, but the Buddha said that all confected things, all objectified things are impermanent and full of suffering. All happenings, all dharmas are empty of self-existence. So the breathing is a dharma that's empty of self-existence. So it's a great thing to study emptiness with. So if you think of something like a rock, you'd think, well, no, a rock is not. A rock is an object. It's a concrete thing. But for me, Carlo Rovelli, looking to what he said, that opened my eyes to this difference between happenings, which are real, empty of self-existence, and confected things. See, Carlo Rovelli said, Carlo Rovelli used the words as things like stones and happenings like kisses. And you see, Carlo Rovelli understood that by studying things in physics at the most minute level. He said, at the most minute level, there are no things like stones. There are only happenings like kisses. Bingo! That's revived the Buddha's teaching just like that. That's what the Buddha was saying. See, people will often say, the Buddha said, all things are impermanent, full of suffering, and non-self. No, did he say that? You've missed the whole point. He said, samskaras are impermanent and full of suffering. Things like stones that we've objectified are impermanent and full of suffering. Dharmas are empty of self-existence. And dharmas means happenings. All happenings are empty of self-existence. So the breathing is empty of self-existence. But that's kind of obvious, isn't it? You can't, there's no thing called breathing. It's a happening. That's what we're studying. That's what Wim Hof's bringing our attention to. Let the body do what the body's capable of doing. That is a happening. We allow happenings. Let the neck be free, to let the head go forward and up, to let the spine lengthen, the back widen. That means allow a happening. That's Buddhist practice. The other thing is when you try and achieve something, you set up an end you want to gain, a goal you want to get your dirty paws on. That's a samskara, a confected thing. So, for me, what unlocked all this was studying Nagarjuna. Ya pratitya samutpadam prapanchopashamam shivam. Shivam. Happiness, health, strength. What the Buddha taught was happiness, health, strength, which is dependently arisen, which is the ending of bullshit, the ending of objectification. So this is what Wim's teaching. Wim is teaching in his own way the ending of bullshit and the happiness, which is not a thing. It's not a confected thing. It's a dependently arisen happening. Ya pratitya samutpadam prapanchopashamam shivam deshayamasa. He taught Sambuddhas, the fully enlightened Buddha. Tam vande vadatam varam. I bow to him, the best of speakers. You see, what we're doing here, we're going back deep into the physiology. And in the same time, we're going back deeper into what the Buddha really taught. He taught happenings. Okay, so when I've been practicing Wim Hof breathing, as I just did with a whispered R, I don't know how many rounds I just did, but generally I count 30 rounds of whispered R's. And then sometimes I will let myself sort of go more into the breathe motherfucker instruction that Wim said. Just fucking get on with it. Don't think about directions. Don't think about whispered R's, but just do the breathing, just like Wim said. Fully in, let it go. Fully in, let it go. So the difference, what I'm suggesting, is before you get into that, it kind of, to use Wim's own analogy, when you go on a first date, the more preparation, the better. Don't rush too much into things. And I think that for some of us, especially with an Alexander sensibility, you switch on your YouTube to help you do the breathing, and within, like Wim says, like 10 seconds, just relax, and then fully in, it's a bit direct. So the Alexander approach is always indirect. See, direct is end gaining. Indirect is you follow the process to get you there. And this is not a criticism of Wim. I'm just saying, for some of us, it can work. It might be better to be more indirect about it. So, you could do 1 or 2 rounds of the whispered R, and then go for it just like Wim does. So, fully in, and let it go. Now, see, when I just demonstrated that, the first one I did, I went fully in, just go for it. And I went like that, you see, my old bad habit. So that's proved my point. And then, because I've been practicing the whispered R, I didn't do it the second time. The point of practicing the whispered R more consciously is that when you come and just go for it, let it come out in the wash phase. Just breathe, motherfucker. Let it come out in the wash. Not trying to be right. Just fucking get on with it. Fully in. That's what Wim says. You can see his approach. There's so much wisdom in it. So there's no criticism here. I'm just relating it to the more indirect Alexander approach, which is also reflected in what the Buddha taught about mindfulness of breathing. So you see, the monk goes to the foot of a tree, and what does he do? What does he do at the beginning of his practice? Absolutely bugger all. He doesn't do anything. He just watches whether the breath is short or long. You see, and then the next thing in the Mindfulness Sutta is in Pali, it's sabakaya pati samvedi asasi sami. Asasi sami is I will breathe in. It's intention, just like Wim talks about again, the intention to breathe in. Sabakaya means the whole body, and pati samvedi means reflecting with reflective awareness of being aware of. So being aware of the whole body, I will breathe in. So in other words, let the neck be free, to let the head go forward and up, to let the back lengthen and widen, sending these forwards and away. Pulling to the elbows and widening across the upper part of the arms as you widen the back. Those are all the Alexander directions for breathing with the whole body. Let the neck be free, to let the head go forward and up, to let the spine lengthen and the back widen, sending the knees forwards and away, pulling to the elbows and widening across the upper part of the arms as you widen the back. So you think those directions, it informs the whole body with thought. So again, we're not against thinking in the Alexander work, we're just against the wrong kind of thinking. The good kind of thinking is thinking that informs your whole body with thought. So in the Mindfulness Sutta, Savakaya pati samvedi pasasi sami tisikati. One trains oneself, tisikati, it's training, thinking sabakaya, the whole body, pati samvedi, being aware of, pasasi sami, I will breathe out. So when you're holding the breath, you have that thought, I will breathe out. I will breathe in. I mean, when you're holding the breath, I will breathe in. Being aware of the whole body. So it's say no, give your directions. Give your directions, go into movement without a care in the world. So the breathing is a movement that you go into without a care in the world with awareness of the whole body. That's the second stage in mindfulness of breathing. The first stage is you just sit there and don't have any intention, no agenda, no intention to improve. The bar is right on the ground. All you're doing is being aware if your breath is long or short. You add directions to that, and the breathing might change, even though you've got no intention to breathe in or no intention to intervene. You're just letting it happen automatically. But if you add thought directions that inform the whole body with thought, the breathing will tend to change for the better. Then the next stage is you do have the intention to breathe in and breathe out. So this is what you, in a whisper, are. I will, with my whole body informed with thought, I will breathe out with a whispered R. With my whole body informed with thought, after that I will breathe in. Lovely. But then, this is the emptiness phase of the Mindfulness Sutta, which hasn't been translated hitherto correctly whatsoever, because the reason people don't understand it, how to apply this to the Mindfulness Sutta, is people simply haven't understood the distinction the Buddha made between sanskaras, which confected things or constructs, and dharmas, happenings. So the instruction is Pali's pasambayam kaya sankaran asasi sami tisikati. Tisikati, one trains oneself. Iti, with the thought. Kaya sankara. Now in Sanskrit that would be kaya samskara. So the confected thing of the body, or the body construct, the construct of a body. Pasambayam is causative, so it means allowing it or letting it or making it, and then prasham in Sanskrit means cease or fade away or calm down. So the way it's translated is calming the bodily samskara. And people think it means calming the breath. See, that would be just end gaining. If you try and calm your breathing, that is end gaining. It's precisely that, not what it means at all. If you look it up in any translation of the Mindfulness Sutra, the translation is totally wrong because they don't understand the difference between samskaras and dharmas, confected things or constructs, and happenings. What it means is letting the construct of a body fade away. I will breathe in. Pasambayam kaya sankaran pasasi samiti sikati. One trains oneself in emptiness, in a teaching of emptiness, with the thought, iti, pasasi sami, I will breathe out. Pasambayam, letting fade away, kaya sankaran, the construct of the body. So in Chinese and Japanese, it's shinjin datsuraku, dropping off body and mind. And what that means is letting it come out in the wash. Letting your body do what it's capable of doing is a happening. And in that happening, you're not conscious of your body anymore. What are you conscious of? Well, you're conscious of your breathing. And what is breathing? It's giving oxygen, it's giving carbon dioxide to the grass and the trees, and it's receiving oxygen from the grass and the trees, isn't it? You're part of nature. There's not you. You can't breathe without the trees giving you oxygen, and the trees can't live without carbon dioxide. So that's why mindfulness of breathing is a brilliant bridge into what the Buddha really taught. He taught what Wim is teaching: health, happiness, strength. But when you go deeply back into the physiology and deeply back into what the Buddha taught, theory and practice are one. Practice and theory are one. And the theory that's connected with what Wim is was teaching what the practical practice of mindfulness of breathing. The theory is connected with emptiness. This is what I found by going back. I studied the Master Dogen Shobogenzo in English, and I wasn't satisfied with that, so I went back and studied it in Japanese. And then I still wasn't satisfied, so I went back to Asvaghosha, and Asvaghosha taught me Sanskrit. And then Asvaghosha describes the Buddha's enlightenment as dependently, to do with seeing the dependent arising of suffering, the emptiness of suffering. And then I went back to Nagarjuna, and he explains that with such clarity you wouldn't believe it. So at some point, I'll if I can find somebody to collaborate with who's a better communicator than me, I'm going to do a translation and commentary on Nagarjuna's middle verse, which will make all this abundantly clear. Because once you understood the distinction between samskaras and dharmas, it is all abundantly clear. And so the practical route to understanding that is do the Wim Hof breathing. And what I'm suggesting is what corresponds to the third stage in the Mindfulness Sutta is just breathing. Like Wim says, just breathe, motherfucker. So you're going beyond the conditioning, no sense at all of trying to be right, and you're just losing yourself. You're not thinking about anything else apart from your breathing, and it's not even you that's doing the breathing. In the Mindfulness Sutra, it's saying, I will breathe in, I will breathe out. So let's do 30 rounds of that. Love it. Amazing stuff.